Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. It's a new year, which means another 12 months of talking about Yu-Gi-Oh's most recent and beloved archetypes. But a problem does come up from time to time. My ability to predict and or control future releases means that videos on the channel can become outdated, sometimes even days after release. So how do we fix that? By bringing back an old segment, of course. I've scoured last year's releases, identified cards that came from archetypes I've already explained, bundled them up, and now I bring them all to you here. It's time to run that update you've been putting off, because today's the 2021 Release Roundup. Part 1. Look, there's like 50 cards on this list, something's gotta give. But before we continue, I wanted to let you all know I'll be lending my voice to the Dragon Rider Championship Series 5 tournament on January 8th and 9th. I'll be providing color commentary alongside the host, YCS Extraordinaire, and Grand Maju Master, Yishan McNabb, along with other guests over the course of the event. For more details, check out Dragon Rider Games links in the description, because if you join in, there's the chance I'll pog out over your gameplay live. And while you're supporting Dragon Rider Games, you can also support me by clicking the like and subscribe buttons and joining my Discord, as well as my Twitch page, which you can find here. I'm going to be streaming from there starting on January 14th, and I'd love to hit the ground running with at least 100 followers before we go live on that day. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. For today's segment, we'll be covering the new cards released for these archetypes. I'll be assuming you're familiar with them, so if you haven't yet, I'd highly recommend watching these videos to catch up. And if you have already watched them, maybe go give them another watch. January's a pretty rough time for ad revenue, and I could use all the help I can get. First on our list is a theme that's had its second appearance in a roundup, and was the first explained video I ever made: vampires. Dark Saviors gave the deck a much more cohesive game plan centered around stealing your opponent's monsters, and Ghosts from the Past gave us an interesting new boss in the form of Voivode, but Battle of Chaos laid down the Halloween flavor and gave us even more vampire support that's thankfully much more in line with what was set up in Dark Saviors. First is Vampire Ghost Ogre, and is Ghost Ogre like a cultural thing I'm not aware of? Any kind of meaning that's going right over my head? It would make sense why Snow Rabbit is the only ghost girl that's not a zombie. Anyway, Vampire Ghost Ogre is a level 3 dark zombie monster with 1500 attack and 0 defense. If normal summoned, you can send another vampire card from your hand or face-up field to the grave to add a level 4 or higher vampire monster from your deck to your hand, and if you do, send a level 2 or lower vampire monster from your deck to the grave. So not only does this swap out a vampire for one that might be more desirable, it also sets up Familiar and Retainer, which is incredible because you can then send Ghost Ogre to the grave to summon whichever one you sent to the grave to summon it, and get a search, which in turn sets up Ghost Ogre's second effect. During any main phase, as a quick effect, you can banish Ghost Ogre from your grave and pay 500 life points, and immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a vampire monster. Now, on the surface, this is already a pretty good card. Having extra normal summons is hard to argue with, especially since it stacks with Vampire's Domain to help you deploy your high-level vampires. The big payoff is that it's a quick effect, so you can tribute summon Shadow Vampire to get its revival effect without losing out on a battle phase, field Grimson out of nowhere to save your board, or Vamp. While they would require one more tribute, they're a Silent Honor arc that triggers on normal summon, so if you're faced with a board of huge monsters that threaten to take you out of the game, Ghost Ogre can help you fang in there. The Undead Vampire is a rank 8 Dark Zombie Xyz monster with 3000 attack and 2800 defense, requiring 2 or more level 8 monsters as material. But much like Dampier Sheridan, any monster you control that's owned by your opponent that has a level can be treated as the correct level for this card's Xyz summon. Neither player can target this monster with monster effects, except with ones that were special summoned from the grave, and you can detach a material to have both players mill 4 cards. Then if any number of monsters were sent to the grave by this effect, you can special summon one of them to your field. So you get a big monster that's an incredible payoff for all the monster stealing you'll be doing, has a lot of monster effect protection, and can summon more monsters onto the board, potentially from your opponent as well, to give you more material to make more Vampire Xyz. It's incredibly powerful, it's got more Castlevania art, and it's got such a bland name. Like, was the undead status of these vampires up for debate? Was there some kind of confusion? The last new vampire card is another doozy, Vampire Fascinator, a Link 3 dark zombie monster with 2400 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters, including a zombie monster. If Link summoned, you can target a monster in your opponent's grave and special summon it to your field in defense position, but you're locked into only special summoning zombies for the rest of the turn. They can also tribute a vampire monster to target a monster your opponent controls and take control of it until the end phase. This card is the natural extension of Vampire Sucker. Its ability to summon a monster to your opponent's side of the field guarantees that they'll have a monster for Fascinator to take, while giving you a little card advantage to make up for it. Then you can link them with any other monster, preferably an opponent's monster, because no matter what it is, Sucker covers the zombie requirement for the summon. Fascinator's Link Summon gets you 1 material, tribute the Fascinator to steal another, and as long as both have levels, that's 2 monsters owned by your opponent. At this point, you can make either Sheridan if you need removal, or the Undead Vampire if you're looking to take over the board state. Fascinator is a great enabler for the rest of the strategy, and is primed to help you win any battle. Dream Mirror's also got a new card in this set, Roy the Dream Mirror Heretic, a prime example of why it's important to check out the concept art when they get released. They're a level 3 Dark Fiend monster with 1000 attack and defense, and if normal or special summoned, you can add a Roy the Dream Mirror Disciple from your deck to your hand, then you can make this card light attribute, though it isn't required. This Roy can also tribute another Dream Mirror monster to choose another Dream Mirror monster with a different level from what you tributed from your deck, add either Dream Mirror of Joy or Terror from your deck to your hand, as long as it's specifically printed on the chosen monster, and if you do, special summon that chosen monster from your deck in defense position. That's a mouthful, but let me walk you through how that might work in practice. Summon out Heretic however you want face up, and when you do, you get Disciple, which can special summon themselves from your hand if any Dream Mirror monsters are on the field, which Heretic fits the bill for. This triggers Disciple's effects, but they aren't really important for the rest of the combo. All that matters is that you now have another monster to tribute for Heretic's effect. Now, let's say you really want some removal, so the monster you choose from the deck is Black Knight Morpheus. But first you add Dream Mirror of Joy from your deck to your hand because it's what's written on Black Knight Morpheus's effect text. When it resolves, you get the pop, and now you have Joy in hand to play if you want to swap Black Knight for White Knight. And you'll find this works for every combination of Dream Mirrors, as we don't have any other level 3 monsters, so everything's up for grabs, and each one you can summon lists the opposite mirror, letting you summon the other as needed, which ends up making the Heretic version of Roy a better enabler for the deck than Disciple. Try to square that circle. Magistus got some new cards recently that seem to give a visual representation to what the mechanics of the deck implied, showing the various sorcerers combined with their associated extra deck monster. Riliona, the Wondrous Magistus Witch Wardrobe, is a rank 4 light spellcaster Xyz monster with 1000 attack and 2800 defense, requiring 2 level 4 spellcaster monsters with different attributes as material. You can detach a material to special summon a Magistus monster from your deck, but you can't special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn except Magistus monsters. And while equipped to a monster, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Mechanics wise, this is actually super cool. It can field any main deck Magistus you need and provides effect negation as an equipped monster, something the deck desperately needs. Story wise, we can see some bad stuff is happening. Riliona, who we know either is or related to Witchcrafter Madame Vare, seems to have usurped Ninaruru. Like, take a look at their art. Ninaruru has glass animals that share their space on the dais, and everything looks very serene. But here we can see Riliona has taken up the entire dais with their humongous dress, causing the bird to fly away, and the little feline cub to just hang onto the dress for dear life. While still shackled, by the way, all while Riliona has this big smug look on their face, making a real glass of themselves. We also have Zoroa, the Magistus Conflagrant Calamity, a level 8 fire spellcaster synchro monster with 2900 attack and 1500 defense, requiring a spellcaster tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters as material. If this card is synchro summoned, you can equip a Magistus monster from your extra deck to this card, gaining access to whichever effect they offer. And while on the field, your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters with the same card type as Magistus monster cards in your spell and trap zone, counting Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and Link monsters. Note that they don't have to be equipped to this Zoroa, just that you have to have them in your spell and trap zone. And if in the grave, you can target a Magistus card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card. Now, that last effect is pretty versatile. You can destroy Magistus monsters, as well as Magistus that are currently being treated as equip cards, but you can also destroy the continuous spell Tris Magistus. Though considering the fact we don't see Zorua in any material past this point, at least by the story's chronology, these effects might point to why. While negating the effects of extra deck monsters might be like asserting their dominion over the other Magistus, since their power largely comes from those extra deck monsters, which would give them a pretty substantial motive for murder, self-preservation might be the more pressing motive, since Calamity Zorua destroys Magistus to revive themselves. But we aren't going to get the full picture until we get the Endymion and Crowley combos, and I will not rest until they're released, so help me, Konami! The Dark Machina saga continues with what is presumably their final monster, Machina Ruin Force. They're a level 10 Dark Machine monster with 4600 attack and 4100 defense that can't be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your grave by banishing machine monsters from your grave whose total levels equal 12 or more. When your opponent activates a card or effect during the battle phase, as a quick effect you can pay half your life points to negate the activation, and if you do, halve your opponent's life points. And if this card is destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can special summon up to 3 of your banished Machina monsters whose total levels equal 12 or less. That makes for an incredibly powerful loop, because once those Machina end up in the grave again, you can just banish them to bring back Ruin Force. And while its monstrous attack and life point halving effect might make you think that's what its claim to fame is, it's actually because it's become the centerpiece of a new FTK. Fill your deck with level 12 machines you can't normal summon or set, then grind through your entire deck with Monster Gate and Reasoning. Fill your grave with enough resources, and you can summon enough Ruin Forces to make enough Gustav Maxes to win the game. Which may sound like a huge cop-out and betrayal of how the deck was meant to be played, but that's actually the kind of heinous and evil knowledge that was locked away inside the unauthorized boot-up device, so that scans. And speaking of cops, a deck that's gotten some big updates since last we saw them was S-Force, and let me tell ya, they've gotten even more bastard since we last saw them. Their column mechanics are a little complicated, so I definitely recommend checking out my video about them as a refresher. S-Force Retroactive is a level 1 light warrior monster with 0 attack and defense, and if a monster you control would be used as link material for an S-Force monster's link summon, you can use Retroactive as material from your hand as well, which really helps with Justify's hefty material requirements. And during any main phase as a quick effect, you can return Retroactive to your hand to special summon a level 2 or higher S-Force monster from your hand, making Platina and Gravitino much easier to use. Not to mention you can use the effect to summon out any S-Force to any column at the drop of a hat. Lastly, if an S-Force monster you control would banish any number of cards from your hand to activate its effect, you can banish Retroactive from your grave instead, which helps both Rapid Chiyomaru and Orifists, so glad they changed that name, effects, as well as another S-Force card we'll talk about in just a bit. Now, we know the S-Force have members that are tied to other archetypes, including confirmations of connections with Time Thieves and Psyframes via some of the support. Retroactive here looks like a smaller Justify, and dare I say it has a bit of FA flair going on, but considering the name and the gear-shaped holograms, I wouldn't be surprised if they're rocking some Time Thief tech. Though I guess it isn't calibrated all too well. If it worked properly, Retroactive might have shown up a lot earlier in S-Force's release, so they could be a lot more helpful. S-Force Edge Razor is a level 4 Dark Cybers monster with 1500 attack and 1300 defense, and while on the field, your opponent's monsters in the same column as your S-Force monsters cannot be used as material for the link summon of a link 3 or higher monster, which actually feels kinda nutty considering how generic links are and how powerful game enders like Access Code and Boral Sword can be. And if normal or special summoned, you can special summon an S-Force monster from your hand in attack position, giving you more ways to summon Gravitino and Platina. Now that's what I call Cyburst security. S-Force Dog Tag is a level 5 light machine monster with 1600 attack and 2100 defense, and during your main phase, specifically, your opponent can't activate the effects of monsters in the same column as an S-Force monster you control. And if your opponent normal or special summons a monster while you control an S-Force monster, you can special summon Dog Tag from your hand. Its own control effect is kinda lackluster. It does stop negation bodies from stopping your plays, which is pretty neat, but does nothing to stop your opponent on their turn, or during your battle phase, or your standby phase, or your end phase. Basically, if those monsters have quick effects that can be used whenever they want, they're gonna get to use them. However, it's much more valuable as a tool to extend your columns. Remember, while Dog Tag has a lackluster effect, the S-Force's column effect applies to every column occupied by an S-Force. So even if Dog Tag doesn't stop effects on your opponent's turn, it still stops them from being used as link material, debuffing their attacks, or even lock who they can attack, given the right monsters, meaning that whichever setup you're going for, this monster's great for tagging along. S-Force Lapswell is a level 6 Light Fiend monster with 2400 attack and 2500 defense, and if special summoned, you can target an S-Force monster in your grave and special summon it. You can also banish an S-Force card from your hand to destroy all your opponent's monsters in the same column as your S-Force monsters. This makes for another great special summon off of monsters like Chiyomaru, Platina, and Retroactive, and the wider you go with your S-Forces, the more destructive your Raigeki in a can be. Though it's probably not good optics for your law enforcement institution to have a literal demon in its ranks. I mean, we know they're all bad, but this is just mask off right here. Their last new card is S-Force Chase, a normal trap that lets you target face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of S-Force monsters you control with different names and return them to the hand. They don't even have to be in the same column, and they don't even have to be monsters. So like Lapswell, the more S-Force you put together, the more powerful your on-theme emergency evacuation device will be. And like Retroactive, you can banish it from your grave in place of an S-Force card in hand for the activation of your S-Force monster's effects. It's an outstanding way to deal with cards your S-Forces can't otherwise interact with, and confirms another monster as part of their world, IP Masquerena, who's being chased by Rapid Chiyomaru and Dog Tag. And to be fair, Mask does make a habit of stealing and transporting data, so you know, no one's the good guy in this scenario. We've also got our new Plunder Patroll card that's absolutely wild, Black Eyes, the Plunder Patrol Sea Guide. They're a level 4 Water Fiend monster with 1000 attack and defense that you might be familiar with from previous cards. While in your hand, you can target a Plunder Patrol monster in your grave, except another copy of Black Eyes, special summon our little bird friend, and if you do, add the targeted monster to your hand, but you're locked into only special summoning Plunder Patrol monsters for the rest of the turn. And if sent from your hand or monster zone to the grave, you can target a Plunder Patrol monster card in your spell and trap zone and special summon it in defense position. This is incredibly helpful for summoning back a Blackbeard you used to crew a ship so you can get the effect again, though it can also help with Redbeard and Whitebeard to similar effect. So it's a really nifty way to get you the material you need for your summons, as well as getting back key pieces to keep your plays crowing. Their next card is no, wait, that's an Amazement card. Well, might as well cover those while we're here. Amazement Assistant Delia is a level 4 light machine monster with 1800 attack and 1400 defense, and you can reveal an attraction trap card from your hand to special summon Delia from your hand. And they can send an attraction trap card from your hand or face-up field to the grave to set an attraction trap card directly from your deck to the spell and trap zone. They look eerily similar to Comica, but I guess that comes with the fact that they're both machines, so they're probably literally made from the same mold, though there are some small differences to help tell them apart if you look close enough. It's nice to have a monster besides Arlecchino to help with your beatdown plays, and being able to act as quick material, as well as a way to get to the attraction trap you want, is Delia Lightful. Amaze Attraction Viking Vortex works like the rest. It's a normal trap that you can equip to either your Amazement monster or any monster your opponent controls, and has a different effect depending on who owns the equipped monster. If it's equipped to a monster you control, once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can negate the attack, and if you do, change control of the equipped monster until the end of the battle phase. And if your opponent controls the equipped monster, when the equipped monster's effect is activated, it's returned to the hand as a mandatory effect. It doesn't negate it, but it does get it off of the field, which is great against extra deck monsters. Its first effect is very odd, but in line with the idea that all the attractions are loose references to different archetypes, this one being Plunder Patrol. Giving the monster to your opponent is kind of like when the patrol's equipped to your ships if we treat our opponent as the ship, and the second effect might reference Black Eye's effect to return a card to the hand. But either way, it doesn't really bode well for your opponent. I'm a little late to the festivities, but the Christmas archetype got an update as well. Starry Knight Orbitael, a level 4 light fairy monster with 400 attack and 2100 defense. As a quick effect, you can target a light monster you control, and on resolution, you tribute it, and if you do, set a Starry Knight spell or trap directly from your deck. And if a face-up level 7 light dragon monster you control returns to the hand while Orbitael is in the grave, except during the damage step, you can special summon Orbitael from your grave. Starry Knights are all about benefiting from the summoning and bouncing of Radiant Seiryu, or as we're calling it now, Starry Knight Starry Dragon, and Orbitael is another value engine to add to the mix. You can find cards that search you level 7 light dragons, add another member of the archetype to your hand, or give you additional normal summons. You might want to look back at any of these cards you might have pulled, because with all the enabling this card can do, you better be pondering that Orbitael. Ice Barrier is a normal trap that you can activate when an attack is declared involving an opponent's monster. That monster's attack is changed to 0, its effects are negated, also it can't change its battle position. You can also banish this card from your grave to send a level 5 or higher water monster from your deck to the grave, then you can add a water monster from your grave to your hand. And until the end of the next turn after this effect resolves, you can't special summon monsters except water monsters. Now, this isn't technically an Ice Barrier card, rather it's a card used by Alexis Rhodes in the GX manga, where her deck is much more ice themed. Does it have any relevance to Ice Barriers proper? Well, kinda. Its grave effect can search you General Wayne, and its on-field effect is just generally useful. Does this mean we'll be going over the rest of Alexis's manga cards? Nope, but a card we will go over that's very tangentially related is Ogdoadic Flood. 'Cause water. It's a continuous spell that has you sending a monster from your hand or field to the grave, then targeting a reptile monster with a different attribute from what you sent to the grave, and special summoning it. Not an Ogdoadic reptile, any reptile. So keep that in mind next time you put together that alien deck. And during any main phase, if any number of monsters are sent to your opponent's grave, you can send a reptile from your deck to the grave, which is basically the same as searching a card for us. This card is everything you could want for the deck, letting you summon your bigger Ogdoadics without having to pay a hefty tribute, while setting up cards in the grave. And if you fill up your grave with something like Snake Rain, you'll be flooded with options. The last archetype we'll be covering today is the one with the biggest update, and that's because it's the latest cycle of the most recent TCG exclusive theme, at least until Libromancers get released, Beetroopers. First is Beetrooper Assault Roller, a level 4 Earth Insect monster with 1600 attack and 1400 defense, and you can special summon them from your hand by banishing an insect monster from your grave, which just goes to show they always wanted us to break Resonance Insect wide open. They gain 200 attack for every other insect you control, and when destroyed by battle, you can add a Beetrooper monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. With this card, we have another way to get more material onto the board, perhaps get some strong attackers, and search for other impactful Beetroopers when run over. Thank goodness Stinglancer's summon is a quick effect. Because of that, even if you're down to this last monster, your opponent can't just make you roll over. Beetrooper Light Flapper is a level 6 water insect monster with 2000 attack and 2200 defense. If normal or special summoned, you can target 2 of your Beetrooper monsters with different names that are banished or are in your grave and add them to your hand. But for the rest of the turn, you can't activate their effects or the effects of cards with the same name. And when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can return Light Flapper from your field to your hand, and if you do, negate that attack. So now we have the field medic of the army. At least, I hope they are. They've got a bottle which I hope is a healing potion, and a roll of parchment I hope isn't toilet paper. Light Flapper is a nice way to get back our banished cards, cause we'll be banishing a lot of them, though our only good ways to get it onto the field are with Invincible Atlas and Formation, the latter of which costs a hefty sum of life points. But the most impressive thing about this card is how it's been able to keep from blowing its cover for so long, since it's a dragonfly. Heavy Beetrooper Mighty Neptune is a level 8 Earth Insect monster with 3000 attack and defense, and can't be normal summoned or set. Rather, it must first be special summoned from your hand by shuffling 3 of your banished insect monsters into the main deck. Oh wait, actually this is a way better way to recycle your lost bugs. During the main phase, if destroyed or banished by an opponent's card while under its owner's control, Mighty Neptune can be special summoned right back. and once per turn during the end phase, you can target any other insect you control, and it gains a persistent 1000 attack boost. This card's amazing. It recycles your banished insects, or at least your main deck ones, can revive if destroyed or banished, and hands out attack bonuses to make your field stronger. This pairs really well with Armorhorn, since you have to banish that many cards to revive them from your grave, and by giving it more attack, it'll stay on the field longer to grant even more normal summons. This monster makes for another great boss in the deck, and you should focus on it quite heavily. But that's not the only boss. Along with a big link, we have an even bigger fusion. Ultra Beetrooper Absolute Hercules, a level 11 Earth Insect fusion monster that requires 4 insects as material. Ooh, goodness. After being fusion summoned, it's unaffected by other cards' effects until the end of your next turn, and at the end of the battle phase, you can target an insect with 3000 or less attack in your grave and special summon it. This card is fine, I guess? 4 materials is a pretty steep cost, and spoilers, our new on-theme fusion spell does not help cheat that cost. Instead, we'll have some token generation to help with that, but this certainly isn't a monster I'd trust to keep my board secure. Rather, it should only be deployed when you absolutely need to get rid of an opponent's monster, or the extra damage on board will close out the game more than the fusion materials used to make it. Not an absolute disappointment of a card, but it's close. As for the fusion spell, Beetrooper Landing is a normal spell that can fusion summon any insect fusion monster, using monsters from your hand or field as material. And if in the grave, except during the turn it was sent there, you can banish 2 insects from your grave to add it back to your hand. If more insect fusions come out, then I could see this being a nifty way to make sure you always have a fusion effect, but with the only other one being Coagger Hercules, please reprint this card by the way, this card just doesn't stick the landing. Beetrooper Descent is a normal spell that makes you a Beetrooper token, which is a level 3 Earth Insect with 1000 attack and defense, and then if you control an insect monster with 3000 or more attack, you can destroy 1 other spell or trap on the field. So we've got a card that makes us a free Beetrooper to help with the summon of our extra deck Beetroopers, whether by Link Summon or Fusion Summon, and if we've already established a big bug, it can also blast a back row as a little reward. So if anything, it ascends your card advantage. The only thing that's descending is the property value of that castle. It's gonna take a lot of renovation to fix that place up. Our last card is Beetrooper Squad, a normal trap that has you tributing a non-token insect monster to special summon up to 1 Beetrooper token for every 1000 original attack of the tributed monster. Now, this has some similarities to another insect token making card, Multiplication of Ants, which turns any insect into 2 insect tokens. Squad has a potentially higher ceiling, but it is a trap card, meaning it isn't as useful for putting together quick material for extra deck summons. However, I think another application that might make this card worth running is for closing out games. The tokens don't have any restrictions placed on them, so if you need some extra damage to clear out a game, tribute something like Link Atlas or Mighty Neptune to get 3000 more attack on board out of nowhere. And then if your opponent survives, you can fold them into Link monsters to solidify your board placement, which are some real #squad goals. And that's all the cards we'll be covering this episode. Tune in next time for the rest of what 2021 had to offer the archetypes we've gone over so far, and if you haven't already, make sure you like the video to show your support, subscribe so you don't miss part 2, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Nebula Navigators, Adam Zajadel, Benjamin Meisner, Eric, Gloomba 331, Howling Zangetsu, John Manji, Panther J, Shooting Star 3300, Sun Sorrow and the Wizard Moose, and Cosmic Crusaders Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Colin Todd, RGS, and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. And if you'd like to be a part of the credits as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you want to see another melting pot of cards, make sure to check out last year's edition of the release Roundup to see more support for some of the cards mentioned here. And if you want to see 2 Yu-Gi tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenkinai's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.